Welcome to Commentary Companions. I'm your host, Tony Garcia, and I just want to say it's good to be back. I know it's been a long time since I've done a Commentary Companions episode in general, but thankfully I was able to find a new place to move into, and so, well, I'm pretty much safe in a new place, and I don't have to worry about any potential bullying or gaslighting from my estranged father. But yeah, I'm okay now, and now I can go back to doing Commentary Companions as promised. Now, I had been wanting to do a sort of podcast episode for a long time, and this would be a bit of a change of pace. I had contemplated on what kind of podcast idea to do that wouldn't be an audio commentary to a movie. I contemplated maybe doing like a podcast review of the Ryan Coogler directed horror movie Sinners, or maybe the Looney Tunes movie The Day the Earth Blew Up. That probably would have been a lot of fun, and but it probably would have also been very, very different from the solo Deadpool and Wolverine movies that I reviewed, as it also wouldn't feature any music. And sometimes music, or lack thereof, can make or break a review. And I think when I gave the Deadpool and Wolverine reviews that music, it certainly contributed to those reviews' personalities. And I really did like the kill count music. But yeah, this is a different idea, as I get to talk about my love for movies and one of my favorite directors. And I've mentioned that Steven Spielberg is one of my favorite movie directors. Now, if you're new to this channel or new to movies in general, you might be wondering, who's Steven Spielberg? Well, Steven Spielberg is a filmmaker, one of the major figures of the new Hollywood era, and pretty much a pioneer of the modern blockbuster. And not only is he a director, he's also a successful producer and the co-founder of the mini major studio DreamWorks SKG. So, yeah, Steven Spielberg is a big deal, an Oscar winner, and very influential. And I've been a big fan of his work since I was a kid. And I've been a big fan of a lot of the projects that he's produced, such as like the Warner Brothers cartoons that he produced, and also movies like Men in Black. He's certainly helped define the careers of many directors. And of course, Spielberg is no slouch himself in the director's chair. When you think of Spielberg, you might think of killer sharks, dinosaurs come to life, whimsical aliens through the perspective of a child, that kind of stuff. And, well, Spielberg is a master of that. And I figure if you're wanting to get into movies and you want to get into Steven Spielberg, I feel there are some movies that are practically essential to really watch. Like, if you're going to get into Steven Spielberg, here are some movies that he directed that I think you should really watch in order to get into him. And these are the films that I feel are essential. And so, for this Commentary Companions episode, this episode will be known as The Essential Steven Spielberg Movies. Now, the following rules for the essential Steven Spielberg movies are: they can only be theatrical movies. Straight-to-DVD movies will not apply or qualify. And these movies need to be solely directed by Steven Spielberg. No movies that were executively produced by him. So, films like the Back to the Future trilogy and Who Framed Roger Rabbit will not qualify because Spielberg merely produced those films. Those films were directed by Robert Zemeckis. But, however, writing and story credits will be an exception because writers deserve just as much credit as directors. They are the ones who write the story, which is what matters most. Now, I did say that these would be theatrical movies, but I will, however, give a shout out to some of Spielberg's earlier works before he made his directorial debut with The Sugarland Express. For you see, like most directors, Spielberg got his start directing television movies, and his first ever directorial effort was for a segment on Night Gallery, Now, Night Gallery was a 1969 made-for-TV anthology supernatural horror film created by Rod Serling. Rod Serling is best known for hosting and creating the supernatural science fiction anthology television series Night Gallery. No. He was known for creating The Twilight Zone. I did not mean to disrespect Rod Serling like that, but you get the point. Rod Serling was best known for creating anthology shows that discussed social issues. And Steven Spielberg got his start directing a segment for the TV movie. That TV movie, that second segment was known as Eyes. Now, the Eyes segment is about an old woman, played by Joan Crawford, known as Miss Claudia Menlo, a blind queen who reigns in a carpeted penthouse on Fifth Avenue, an imperious predatory dowager who will soon find a darkness blacker than blindness. This is her story. Basically, it's about an old blind woman who is trying to regain her eyesight. And for a first-time direction, Spielberg does quite a great job. And it's a great way to start out in the effort of directing. But of course, Spielberg's next film after Eyes in Night Gallery was a film called Duel. Now, Duel was a 1971 movie directed by Steven Spielberg, and this was the first time he was directing something that wasn't an anthology movie. It was a feature film debut. In Duel, a traveling salesman named David Mann is driving his car through rural California to meet a client. However, he finds himself chased and terrorized by a mostly unseen driver of a semi-truck. Duel was based on a short story written by Richard Matheson that he published in April of 1971 for Playboy, which was based on an encounter on November 22nd, 1963, when a driver dangerously cut him off on a California freeway. And Richard Matheson was the one who actually adapted the story for Duel. And Duel is a very great thriller, and while it was a TV movie that aired on ABC, in international areas, Duel was actually released in theaters. It received an international theatrical release by Universal in an extended version featuring scenes shot after the film's original TV broadcast. And Spielberg's direction was singled out as praise and has since been recognized as an influential cult classic and one of the greatest TV films ever made. It's like, a film like Duel is popular when Tiny Toon Adventures spoofs it. That's actually pretty funny. But yeah, those are the TV movies that Spielberg directed that I at least wanted to make an effort to give a shout out to, if that makes sense. But now we can talk about some real theatrical movies, such as A Sophomore Effort. This year is 2025, which marks the 50th anniversary of this film I'm about to talk about. That film being the American thriller Jaws. Now, Jaws is notable for actually being a sophomore directorial effort for Steven Spielberg. And you probably, if you haven't seen it, you might know of Jaws' reputation, including that famous theme song, dun 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 dun. But yeah, Jaws was a major game changer when it came to modern cinema, pioneering the modern blockbuster. It was a summer modern hit. For those who don't know, Jaws is about a shark not just any shark, a great white shark that starts attacking beachgoers at a New England summer resort town. And so it's up to Police Chief Martin Brody, portrayed by the late Roy Scheider, to team up with biologist Matt Hooper, played by Richard Dreyfuss, and shark hunter Quint, played by the late Robert Shaw. They must team up to hunt down the great white shark from attacking more innocent bystanders, because this shark is a man-eater, figuratively and literally. And Well, Jaws was very much what can be said about Jaws that hasn't been said already? I mean, even if it wasn't a horror movie like some people might think, it would be considered probably a great film in general. It's influential. A lot of people look up to Jaws as pretty much one of the best and how to do killer shark movies. Now, shot mostly on location at Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts from May to October 1974, Jaws was the first major motion picture to be shot on the ocean and consequently had a troubled production, going over budget and schedule. As the art department's mechanical sharks often malfunctioned, Spielberg decided to mostly suggest the shark's presence, employing an ominous and minimalist theme created by collaborator and composer John Williams to indicate its impending appearances. Spielberg and others have compared this suggestive approach to that of director Alfred Hitchcock. And Jaws is also based off of a book that was released in 1974 by Peter Benchley, who also co-wrote the screenplay with Carl Gottlieb. And, well, this film almost sunk at the box office, but thankfully it turned out to be a great success. It's regarded as a watershed moment in motion picture history. Jaws was a prototypical summer blockbuster and won several awards for its music and editing. It was the highest-grossing film in history until the release of Star Wars 2 years later. Both films were pivotal in establishing the modern Hollywood business model, which pursues high box office returns from action and adventure films with simple, high-concept premises. Released during the summer in thousands of theaters and advertised heavily. Jaws was followed by 3 sequels, ironically none of which involved Spielberg or Benchley, as well as many imitative thrillers. What I think is funny is that what I find shocking about Jaws is that all 4 films are not rated R. I actually assumed all of them were rated R, but nope, they were all rated PG. You would think a film about a killer shark would be more violent, but that wasn't the case with Jaws. But I think that's irrelevant because Jaws is great. I mean, it has great suspense, and I think the film benefits from showing the shark at minimalist times. I remember getting to watch it 10 years ago, and I can see why it's such a big deal. That the film is really great. It's suspenseful, it's thrilling, and it gives you a reason to care for the human characters as they battle this great white shark. And I'll admit, there was actually one scene where I actually screamed when a severed head just popped out because I thought it was a shark. But that's the kind of impact that Jaws has. I mean, if you are a fan of Steven Spielberg, I would actually recommend watching Jaws. I see it as the most essential movie as it helped put Spielberg on the map as a director and really helped him gain a successful reputation. It actually is a very big deal. So yeah, Jaws is definitely on the list of essential Steven Spielberg movies. Another Steven Spielberg directed movie that I feel is essential to getting into him would have to be Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which was released in 1977 and was one of Spielberg's first efforts into the science fiction genre, involving aliens. Close Encounters starred Richard Dreyfuss, his second collaboration with Spielberg, Melinda Dillon, Terry Garr, Bob Balaban, Kerry Guffey, and Francois Truffaut. I hope I pronounced that right. I'm not French. The film depicts the story of Roy Neary, played by Dreyfuss, an everyday blue-collar worker in Indiana whose life changes after an encounter with an unidentified flying object, otherwise known as a UFO, and Gillian Gwiller, a single mother who's played by Melinda Dillon, whose 3-year-old son Barry is abducted during the same UFO manifestation. It's very much a man meets alien sort of project. Close Encounters is also notable for being one of the few times Steven Spielberg ever wrote a script for a film that he directed. I mean, most of the time Spielberg let other people write the stories that he would direct. which you'll notice throughout this episode. But Close Encounters was a long-cherished project for Spielberg. In late 1973, Steven Spielberg developed a deal with Columbia Pictures for a science fiction film. Though Spielberg received sole credit for the script, he was assisted by Paul Schrader, John Hill, David Giler, Hal Barwood, Matthew Robbins, and Jerry Belson, all of whom contributed to the screenplay in varying degrees. The title is derived from ufologist J. Allen Hynek's classification of close encounters with extraterrestrials, in which the third kind denotes human observations of extraterrestrials or animate beings. Douglas Trumbull served as the visual effects supervisor, while Carlo Rambaldi designed the extraterrestrials. Made on a production budget of $19.4 million, Close Encounters was released in a limited number of cities on November 16th and the 23rd of 1977, and expanded into wide release the following month. It was a critical and financial success, eventually grossing over $300 million worldwide. At the 50th Academy Awards, Close Encounters of the Third Kind was nominated 9 Academy Awards at the 1978 Oscars. The categories were for Best Director, Best Supporting Actress, Best Art Direction, Best Film Editing, Best Original Score, Best Sound, Best Visual Effects. And the funny thing is, John Williams was nominated for Best Original Score but for Close Encounters, but lost, ironically, to Star Wars, A New Hope. And Best Visual Effects also lost out to Star Wars as well. But it did win 2 specific Oscar awards. Best Cinematography for Vilmos Zsigmond, and the Special Achievement Academy Award for Sound Effects Editing that was given to Frank Warner, who probably didn't work for Warner Brothers. Close Encounters was also very notable for having a special edition. This special edition was released theatrically in 1980, 45 years ago. Spielberg agreed to create this edition to add more scenes that they had been unable to include in the original release, with the studio demanding a controversial scene depicting the interior of the extraterrestrial mothership. Spielberg's dissatisfaction with the altered ending scene led to a third version, the director's cut on VHS and Laserdisc in 1998, and later DVD and Blu-ray. This third special edition version is the longest version, combining Spielberg's favorite elements from both the previous editions, but removing the scenes inside the mothership. Talk about so many director's cuts, am I right? But Close Encounters is an iconic science fiction film, and really does capture the wonder of man's encounter with aliens, portrayed in such a positive light. I must confess, I've actually never seen Close Encounters, but I'm hoping to rectify that mistake someday, because I think it definitely seems like one of the most essential Steven Spielberg movies out there that I should watch if I'm to really get into him. And I think you should also watch Close Encounters of the Third Kind if you want to get into Steven Spielberg as a film director. But of course, that's not the only science fiction movie about aliens that Steven Spielberg has directed. Of course, you know what I'm talking about. I'm, of course, talking about E.T. the Extraterrestrial, released in 1982, written by the late Melissa Matheson. It's pretty much the ultimate trope of a young boy befriends an alien from another planet, and in this film, Elliot, played by Henry Thomas, befriends an extraterrestrial nicknamed E.T., who has been stranded on Earth. Along with his friends and family, Elliot must find a way to help E.T. find his way home. The film also stars Dee Wallace, Peter Coyote, Robert McNaughton, C. Thomas Howell, and a very young Drew Barrymore. The film's concept was based on an imaginary friend that Stephen created after his parents' divorce. In 1980, Spielberg met with Melissa Matheson and developed a new story from the unrealized project Night Skies. In less than 2 months, Matheson wrote the first draft of the script, which was originally titled E.T. and Me, which went through 2 rewrites. The project was rejected by Columbia Pictures, who doubted its commercial potential. Universal eventually purchased the script for $1 million. Filming took place from September to December 1981 on a budget of $10.5 million. Unlike most films, E.T. was shot in rough chronological order to facilitate convincing emotional performances from the young cast. The animatronics for the film were designed by Carlo Rambaldi. E.T. premiered as the closing film of the Cannes Film Festival on May 26, 1982, and was released in the United States on June 11th. The film was a smash hit at the box office, surpassing Star Wars to become the highest-grossing film of 1982, which lasted for 11 years. E.T. would receive universal acclaim from critics and is regarded as one of the greatest and most influential films ever made. It received 9 nominations at the 55th Academy Awards and won Oscars for Best Original Score, Best Visual Effects, Best Sound, and Best Sound Editing, in addition to being nominated for Best Picture and Best Director. Of course, if you know, you would know that E.T. lost Best Picture to Gandhi. It also won 5 Saturn Awards and 2 Golden Globe Awards. The film was released in 1985 and again in 2002 to celebrate its 20th anniversary with altered shots, visual effects, and additional scenes. And it even has an attraction at Universal Studios, Florida. However, I would recommend not watching the 20th anniversary version because it has a CG E.T. that was maligned by many fans and critics. E.T. was also recreated in IMAX on August 12, 2022 to celebrate its 40th anniversary. In 1994, the film was added to the United States National Film Registry of the Library of Congress, who deemed it culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. And I do agree, E.T. is definitely significant. It really does capture the wonder of a child's innocence, and it may be the cliched boy befriends an alien, but it's done perfectly well. The animatronics for the E.T. alien really do hold up to this day. And this film was definitely the film that Spielberg needed after the critical and financial failure of the wartime comedy 1941. That film nearly destroyed Spielberg's reputation and the reputations of its actors and its 2 writers. Thankfully, the 2 writers were able to come back with films that I might mention, but that I mentioned earlier. The 2 writers of 1941 were Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale, who would later write and direct Romancing the Stone and Back to the Future. But yeah, E.T. was the film that Spielberg needed after the critical and financial embarrassment of 1941, and it pretty much became one of Spielberg's most defining films, and the iconic shot of Elliot flying on his bicycle with E.T. as in view of the moon became so iconic, it became part of the Amblin logo. And of course, when I see the Amblin logo, I immediately think of Steven Spielberg. I mean, if you are a fan of Steven Spielberg, I highly recommend that you watch E.T. the Extraterrestrial. It is certainly one of the most essential Steven Spielberg movies, and is a rite of passage when it comes to filmmaking. And now I'll talk about a film that Spielberg was heavily involved in that he may or may not have directed. That film being Poltergeist, a 1982 American supernatural horror film directed by Texas Chainsaw Massacre director Tobe Hooper, which was written by Steven Spielberg, Michael Grace, and Mark Victor from a story by Spielberg. The film stars Jo Beth Williams, Craig T. Nelson, Beatrice Straight, and was produced by Spielberg and Frank Marshall. The film focuses on a suburban family whose home is invaded by malevolent ghosts that abduct their youngest daughter. Now, when Poltergeist was made, Spielberg was contractually unable to direct another film while making E.T. the Extraterrestrial. Tobe Hooper was selected based on his work on Texas Chainsaw Massacre and The Funhouse. The origin of Poltergeist can be traced to Night Guys, which Spielberg conceived as a horror sequel to Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Hooper was less interested in the sci-fi elements and suggested they collaborate on a ghost story. Accounts differ as to the level of Spielberg's involvement, but it is clear that he was frequently on set during filming and exerted significant creative control. For that reason, some have said that Spielberg should be considered the film's co-director or even main director, though both Spielberg and Hooper have disputed this. I mean, whether it was Steven Spielberg who directed Poltergeist or Tobe Hooper who directed Poltergeist, one thing is for certain: Poltergeist is an influential horror film in the haunted house trope. Released by MGM, Poltergeist was a major critical and commercial success, becoming the 8th highest-grossing film of 1982. In the years since its release, the film has been recognized as a horror classic. It was nominated for 3 Academy Awards, those awards being Best Original Score, Best Sound Effects Editing, and Best Visual Effects, ironically losing all 3 to E.T. the Extraterrestrial. Now that is a scarily hilarious irony. Poltergeist was also named by the Chicago Film Critics Association as the 20th scariest film ever made, and a scene made Bravo's 100 Scariest Moments. Poltergeist also appeared at number 84 on American Film Institute's 100 Years, 100 Thrills. The film was followed by Poltergeist 2, Poltergeist 3, and a 2015 remake, but none have had the critical success of the original. Some say that Poltergeist carries a curse. And I don't know if this podcast could ever really do justice on the controversial side of Poltergeist, including the curse and all the drama and all that. However, if you want a real take on the production hell that Poltergeist endured before, during, and after its production and release, I would highly recommend you watch Production Tales from Hell on Dead Meat. It is most certainly one of the most better way that discusses the drama that it went through in production. And of course, I can't really talk about Spielberg without talking about one of the greatest trilogies of all time, that trilogy being the Indiana Jones trilogy. I might be cheating a little on this, as when I think of Indiana Jones, I also think of George Lucas, but the Indiana Jones trilogy is a very famous trilogy that was very much a joint collaboration between Steven Spielberg and George Lucas, who have been friends since the late 70s. It was conceived as an idea that George Lucas wanted to do, but after the production trouble of the first 2 Star Wars films, Steven Spielberg offered to help direct the first 3 films. And those 3 films are, of course, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, and Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. I was unsure whether I wanted to include Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, but I think the original trilogy is definitely the most essential of the Spielberg movies. It's very much both a George Lucas and Steven Spielberg production, and it's definitely one of my favorites. What can I say about Indiana Jones that hasn't been said? The film is adventurous, it's whimsical, it has great elements of action and horror, and with special effects that still hold up to this day, and really does make you want to study your history when it comes to stuff like the Ark of the Covenant or the Holy Grail. I mean, it's definitely one of the most influential films, influenced by comic books and pulp serials of the 1950s. The film just came out of nowhere and just became one of the most successful franchises of all time, and really giving Harrison Ford a definitive career as Indiana Jones. I mean, a lot of people know him best for playing Han Solo in the Star Wars trilogy. I mean, I'll know him best for Han Solo and Indiana Jones. I have such a personal soft spot for these movies. I really do love them. It really does capture that sense of wonder and adventure. And And I think Raiders of the Lost Ark was definitely the film that Spielberg needed after 1941. I do believe that the Indiana Jones films definitely saved Spielberg's career when it came to those times when some of his other films, like Always and 1941, weren't as successful or didn't capture the same success as E.T. I can definitely say Raiders of the Lost Ark and E.T. definitely saved Indiana Jones's career. Mostly everything about the first three Indiana Jones films definitely holds up. And I think if you're getting into action films or even if you want to get into Steven Spielberg, I definitely recommend watching the Indiana Jones trilogy. The first three are definitely the most essential of the Steven Spielberg movies. It definitely is the GOAT. And now we go into a different genre and a different movie, but still very much an essential movie that I think is very important in Spielberg's filmography. That film being The Color Purple. And I think it's a great time to talk about this movie on the film's 40th anniversary. Now, The Color Purple is an epic period drama film directed by Spielberg and written by Menno Meyjes. I hope I pronounced that right. It's Dutch. So maybe it's Meyjes or Meyjes. But anyway, yeah, written by Menno Meyjes, based on the 1982 novel by Alice Walker. This was Steven's 8th film as a director, and it marked a turning point in his career as it was a departure from the summer blockbusters for which he had become known for. It's also the first film directed by Spielberg for which John Williams, his frequent collaborator, did not compose the score. And the score was composed by producer Quincy Jones instead. Spielberg produced this film with Jones, Kathleen Kennedy, and Frank Marshall. The Color Purple stars Whoopi Goldberg in her breakthrough role, along with Danny Glover, Oprah Winfrey in her film debut, Margaret Avery, and Adolph Caesar. Filmed in Anson and Union counties in North Carolina, The Color Purple tells the coming-of-age story of a young African-American girl named Kelly Harris, portrayed by Whoopi Goldberg, and the brutal experiences she endured, including domestic violence, incest, child sexual abuse, poverty, racism, and sexism. Upon its release by Warner Brothers on December 18, 1985, The Color Purple was a box office success, grossing $98.4 million against a budget of $15 million. The film received generally positive reviews from critics, with praise going to its acting, especially Goldberg's performance, direction, screenplay, musical score, and production values. Criticism was directed by some for being over-sentimental and stereotypical. The film was nominated for 11 Academy Awards. Those nominations being Best Picture, Best Actress, Best Supporting Actress, Best Screenplay based on material from another medium, Best Art Direction, Best Cinematography, Best Costume Design, Best Makeup, Best Original Score, and Best Original Song. But sadly, The Color Purple did not receive a single win. I mean, that kind of stinks, but hey, that's the Academy for you. These are the same people who didn't give Will Smith and Michael B. Jordan Oscar nominations for their performances in Concussion and Creed, and I still think that's one of the dumbest mistakes they've ever made. Hashtag Oscars so white. The Color Purple also received 4 Golden Globe Award nominations, with Goldberg winning Best Actress in a Drama. In 2006, the American Film Institute ranked Color Purple the 51st on its list of the most inspiring movies. I mean, the film has been a smash success with a great legacy. And it even got a musical film adaptation released 2 years ago based on a 2005 stage musical version. And with Halle Bailey in the role. I mean, I really don't have much of an opinion about The Color Purple because, well, confession time, I've never watched The Color Purple. I probably wouldn't have been ready to watch a film like that at age 13 or any of my teenage years, but as an adult, I think I would be willing to watch The Color Purple. And, well, just to see one of Whoopi Goldberg and Oprah Winfrey's most breakout roles. it does feel essential, if that makes sense. It's definitely, I mean, it definitely, I pretty much, fun fact, when I was developing this list, I didn't really think of The Color Purple, but when my grandparents were kind of watching, skimming through it, I thought to myself, oh yeah, The Color Purple, it definitely is a big deal for when it comes to Steven Spielberg, as it really was a big game changer and showed that he could do more than just whimsical blockbusters. And I think it really paved the way for other serious films that Spielberg could do. And I thought, I should definitely put this on the list of essential Steven Spielberg movies. And, well, I think if you're, like I said, if you're getting into Steven Spielberg, I think The Color Purple is definitely on the list of essential Steven Spielberg movies. And, well, I would definitely recommend it. And now we go from one Spielberg-directed movie to a film in which he was basically involved with the story. That film being The Goonies. And I think it's a great time to talk about The Goonies on its 40th anniversary. Now, The Goonies is a 1985 American adventure comedy film directed and co-produced by Richard Donner from a screenplay by Chris Columbus that was based on a story conceived by Steven Spielberg, which stars Sean Astin, Josh Brolin in his film debut, Jeff Cohen, Corey Feldman, Cary Green, Martha Plimpton, and Ke Huy Quan, with John Matuszak, Robert Davey, Joe Pantoliano, and Anne Ramsey in supporting roles. In the film, a group of children who live in the Goondocks, hence the nickname Goonies, neighborhood of Astoria, Oregon, attempt to save their homes from foreclosure, and in doing so, they discover an old treasure map that takes them on an adventure to unearth the long-lost fortune of One-Eyed Willie, a legendary 17th century pirate, while being pursued by a family of criminals who are after the treasure as well. The film was produced by Spielberg's Amblin Entertainment and released by Warner Brothers theatrically on June 7, 1985 in the United States. The film grossed $69 million worldwide on a budget of $19 million. Critics reviewed the film positively and has since become a cult classic. In 2017, the film was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress as being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. What can I say about The Goonies that hasn't been said? I mean, the film is the kids' adventure film. It's definitely has this charm to it that you just love. I mean, I love the camaraderie between the kid actors. They do such a great job with their performances, and the Goonies really does capture that sense of whimsy and wonder as children go on an adventure looking for treasure. I mean, it definitely feels relatable because, hey, you might have known kids like the kids in the Goonies, or maybe you were those kids in the Goonies. I don't know, but it's definitely, I mean, it does capture that sense of wonder and childhood nostalgia, I must confess. I never did watch The Goonies when I was a kid. I didn't watch The Goonies until I was in my 20s, and I think I'm kicking myself in the back for this stupid-ass decision of not watching The Goonies, because it's definitely one of the most fun movies out there, and it has a fun soundtrack, has a great sense of wonder, and it's really cool seeing actors like Sean Astin and Josh Brolin when they were in their youths acting in these films. And you would never think, when seeing this young Josh Brolin, you'd never think he'd be playing an iconic Marvel villain like Thanos. I mean, he really does give a sense of wonder. I really like the chemistry between him and Sean Astin as brothers, and I really do buy them as brothers. And it is actually it's funny. It really is a funny film, and it really is one of the best. And I mean, this was one of the early efforts of Chris Columbus back when he was just a writer, but his writing is totally on point. It really is great, and I also love the music. And I'm now thinking of their theme song, "Goonies Never Say Die," sung by Cyndi Lauper now. And I was debating whether I should put the Goonies on this list, but hey, this year is the 40th anniversary, and I think, what the hey? I think it should include, since Spielberg was definitely involved in the writing department. Maybe it does violate my rule, since he was also a producer, and I wanted to focus on his directorial efforts, but I feel it would be offensive if I didn't at least mention the Goonies at some point, and I'm glad that I did. But yeah, if you're and the Goonies was definitely the perfect setup for the trope of the group of underdog kids forming together on an adventure, and it was definitely influential on series like Stranger Things and the 2017 It movie. I think if you're a fan of Richard Donner or Steven Spielberg, I would definitely recommend The Goonies. It's definitely an essential Spielberg and Richard Donner movie. Also, before I conclude on The Goonies, rest in peace, Richard Donner, and Goonies Never Say Die. And of course, another film that was directed by Spielberg that I feel is important to mention is, and I definitely see it as the most essential Steven Spielberg movie of all, Jurassic Park, released in 1993. Written by Michael Crichton and David Koepp. I kind of forget that Jurassic Park was based on a novel by Michael Crichton, released in 1990, so the book is 35 years old. Jurassic Park stars Sam Neill, Laura Dern, Jeff Goldblum, Samuel L. Jackson, Wayne Knight, and Richard Attenborough. Set on the fictional island of Isla Nublar near Costa Rica, where wealthy businessman John Hammond, played by Attenborough, and a team of genetic scientists have created a wildlife park of de-extinct dinosaurs. When industrial sabotage leads to a catastrophic shutdown of the park's power facilities and security precautions, a small group of visitors struggle to survive and escape the now perilous island. Now, Jurassic Park is the dinosaur movie. I mean, when you think of dinosaurs, I'm sure Jurassic Park is the first thing you might think of. And the story behind making it is quite interesting. Before Crichton's novel was published, 4 studios put in bids for its film rights. With the backing of Universal Pictures, Spielberg acquired the rights for $1.5 million. Crichton was hired for an additional $500,000 to adapt the novel for the screen. Koepp wrote the final draft, which left out much of the novel's exposition and violence, while making numerous changes to the characters. Filming took place in California and Hawaii from August to November 1992, and post-production lasted until May 1993, supervised by Spielberg in Poland as he filmed Schindler's List. The dinosaurs were created with groundbreaking CGI by Industrial Light and Magic, and with life-sized animatronic dinosaurs built by Stan Winston's team. To showcase the film's sound design, which included a mixture of various animal noises for the dinosaur sounds, Spielberg invested in the creation of DTS, otherwise known as Digital Theater Systems, a company specializing in digital surround sound formats. The film was backed by an extensive $65 million marketing campaign, which included licensing deals with over 100 companies. Jurassic Park premiered on June 9th, 1993 at the Uptown Theater in Washington, D.C., and was released 2 days later throughout the United States. It was a blockbuster hit and went on to gross over $914 million worldwide in its original theatrical run, surpassing Spielberg's own E.T. the Extraterrestrial to become the highest-grossing film of all time until the release of Titanic, surpassing it in early 1998. The film received critical acclaim with praise to its special effects, sound design, action sequences, John Williams' score, and Spielberg's direction. At the 66th Academy Awards, Jurassic Park was nominated for Best Sound Effects Editing, Best Sound, and Best Visual Effects, winning all 3 Oscars. So yeah, Jurassic Park is a pretty big deal, a colossal big deal. Sorry, I was trying to think of a dinosaur pun, but I couldn't think of any. Jurassic Park is also notable for being the oldest film in history to surpass $1 billion in ticket sales, and the 17th overall after a re-release in 2013. In the years since its release, film critics and industry professionals have often cited Jurassic Park as one of the greatest summer blockbusters of all time. Its pioneering use of CGI and practical effects is considered to have paved the way for the visual effects practices of modern cinema. In 2018, it was selected for preservation in the U.S. National Film Registry by the Library of Congress as culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. The film spawned a multimedia franchise including 6 sequels, video games, theme park attractions, comic books, and various merchandising. Now, I was a young boy when I first noticed Jurassic Park. I remember the video games, and, Jurassic Park kind of scared me for a while. I wasn't sure if I really wanted to get into the films. And, eventually, I remember listening to the theme song and having to play said theme song in high school. I remember this medley of John Williams scores that featured 3 of his most popular, Star Wars, E.T., and Jurassic Park, and listening to that theme song from Jurassic Park, it was really, really awakened something in me, and I thought, oh yeah, I definitely want to watch Jurassic Park now, just to listen to that music, because my goodness, John Williams' music is so beautiful in Jurassic Park. It definitely captured that sense of adventure and wonder. I know I sound like a broken record, but it's true. It really is. The Jurassic Park probably wouldn't be what it was without the success of John Williams' score. It really is that important. The story and characters might be basic, but, it's the dinosaurs that we're mainly wanting to watch, and the characters are actually pretty good. I mean, I remember, Sam Hammond and Alan Grant. I mean, they're very memorable characters. Plus, it really helped pave the way for Samuel L. Jackson, because eventually he would star in Pulp Fiction. It's kind of cool knowing that Jurassic Park was one of his big breaks before Pulp Fiction. And the dinosaurs themselves are definitely the main stars of this movie. I mean, it's really cool how it combined practical effects with state-of-the-art CG animation. And the CGI for many of the dinosaurs still holds up over 30 years later. It's really cool getting to see all of this. It's also really cool whenever we see the T-Rex puppet. And, it's a beautiful marriage between practical and CG. And I really do enjoy watching it. I mean, I think if you're going to watch Jurassic Park, I would recommend watching it in theaters whenever you get a chance. It's definitely has a much more epic experience. I mean, I remember first watching Jurassic Park on Netflix, but I think watching it on Netflix really doesn't do the film justice. And I must confess, the first Jurassic Park film is the only one I've watched so far. I haven't watched any of the other sequels. I haven't watched Jurassic World, and I've only seen clips, and I honestly don't care for the Jurassic World films, but Jurassic Park is definitely the best of the franchise. It's definitely, it's still one of the best. It's definitely the GOAT, if you know what I mean. And like I said before, if you're going to get into Steven Spielberg, I highly recommend watching the first Jurassic Park movie. It's definitely the most essential of his films. It's pretty surreal that in 1992 and 1993, Spielberg was busy directing 2 films, and one of them was a different change from Jurassic Park, whereas Jurassic Park was this whimsical adventure film. This one I'm about to talk about is definitely the most serious and the most mature. Well, one of, if that makes sense. That film being Schindler's List. Now, Schindler's List is a 1993 American epic historical drama film directed and produced by Steven Spielberg and written by Steven Zaillian. Steven Zaillian? Well, I hope I pronounced that right. Anyway, but yeah. Schindler's List is based on the historical novel Schindler's Ark, released in 1982 by Thomas Keneally. The film follows Oskar Schindler, a German industrialist who saved more than 1,000 mostly Polish Jewish refugees from the Holocaust by employing them in his factories during World War II. The film stars Liam Neeson as Oskar Schindler, Ray Fiennes as SS officer Amon Goth, Ben Kingsley as Schindler's Jewish accountant, Itzhak Stern. Now, ideas for a film about Schindler were proposed as early as 1963. Poldek Pfefferberg, one of the many Jewish people saved by Schindler, made it his life's mission to tell Schindler's story. Spielberg became interested when executive Sidney Sheinberg sent him a book review of Schindler's Ark. Universal bought the rights to the novel, but Spielberg, unsure if he was ready to make a film about the Holocaust, tried to pass the project to several directors before deciding to direct it himself. Principal photography took place in Krakow, Poland, over 72 days in 1993, right after Jurassic Park had finished wrapping and editing started. Spielberg shot Schindler's List in black and white and approached the film as a documentary. Cinematographer Janusz Kaminski wanted to create a sense of timelessness. John Williams composed the score, and violinist Itzhak Perlman performed the main theme. Schindler's List was premiered on November 30th, 1993 in Washington, D.C. and was released on December 15th, 1993 in the United States. The film received widespread critical acclaim, particularly for the performances of Neeson and Fiennes, Williams' musical score, Kaminski's cinematography, Zelian's screenplay, and Spielberg's direction. It was a box office success, earning $322 million worldwide on a $22 million budget. And this is an interesting fact. Schindler's List was also notable for being the first R-rated movie that Steven Spielberg ever directed. And of course, the film definitely does earn its R rating, and I mean, this is not E.T., I tell you what. But Schindler's List was also a smash at the Academy Awards. At the Oscars, the film was nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Original Score, Best Film Editing, Best Cinematography, Best Art Direction, winning all 7 of those nominations that I mentioned. It was also nominated for Best Actor, Best Supporting Actor, Best Makeup, Best Sound, and Best Costume Design. And Schindler's List pretty much gave Spielberg his first win as a director, which is a very big deal. And it was also the first Spielberg movie to win Best Picture. After pretty much trying to win the Oscar for E.T., Spielberg eventually got it, and that's great. Schindler's List also earned 7 BAFTAs and 3 Golden Globes. It is often listed as one of the greatest films ever made. The film was deemed culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant by the Library of Congress in 2004 and selected for preservation in the U.S. National Film Registry. In 2007, the American Film Institute ranked Schindler's List 8th on its list of the 100th greatest American films. It also led the way for Spielberg to co-found DreamWorks SKG with Jeffrey Katzenberg and Mike Jeffen. Now, what's my opinion on Schindler's List? Well, I have another dark confession to make. I have not seen Schindler's List. I mean, it's definitely a heavy movie. I mean, it's about the Holocaust. It's definitely not a fun subject, and, well, I still haven't had the time to watch Schindler's List, but I hope that I can, because it definitely feels like a rite of passage, right up there with The Exorcist. A very important film that I feel like I need to be emotionally and spiritually ready for, because it talks about heavy subjects. And it's moving, but also a tearjerker at the same time. I mean, this was an emotionally difficult film for Steven Spielberg to make. So much so that his friend Robin Williams went out of his way to call Spielberg to make jokes just to cheer him up. That's how hard making Schindler's List was. But from what I've seen or heard, I mean, the results are definitely worth it. I mean, it's an emotional film, and I've listened to the score. It actually almost moved me to tears. Which is how beautiful it is. And I hope one day, when I'm emotionally ready and spiritually ready, that I can watch Schindler's List. And I'm sure I probably won't regret it. But yes, I definitely do see Schindler's List as the most essential Steven Spielberg movie of them all. And I think if you're going to get into Spielberg, you should definitely watch Schindler's List. And now we go from one World War II movie directed by Spielberg to another iconic World War II movie directed by Spielberg. That film being Saving Private Ryan. Released in 1998, Saving Private Ryan is an American epic war film directed by Spielberg and written by Robert Rodat. Set in 1944 in Normandy, France during World War II, it follows a group of soldiers led by Captain John Miller, portrayed by Tom Hanks, on a mission to locate Private James Francis Ryan, our titular Private Ryan, who is portrayed by Matt Damon, and bring him home safely after his three brothers have been killed in action. The film also includes a young Vin Diesel and also Paul Giamatti. Inspired by the books of Stephen E. Ambrose and accounts of multiple soldiers in a single family, such as the Nilland brothers being killed in action, Rodat drafted Saving Private Ryan, and Paramount hired him to finish writing it. The project came to the attention of Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg, whose involvement, due to their previous successes, secured the project's development. Spielberg wanted to make Saving Private Ryan as authentic as possible and hired Frank Darabont and Scott Frank to do uncredited rewrites based on research and interviews with World War II veterans. The main cast went through a week-long boot camp to help them understand the soldiers' experience. Filming took place from June to September of 1997 on a $65 to $70 million budget, almost entirely on location in England and Ireland. The opening Omaha Beach battle was the most demanding scene, costing $12 million to film over a 4-week period, and using 1,500 background actors. Saving Private Ryan became one of the year's most successful films, earning critical acclaim for its graphic portrayal of combat. World War II veterans described the combat scenes as the most realistic portrayal of their own experiences they had seen. Some said they had been unable to watch it due to their traumatic memories. The film earned $481.8 million on a budget of between $65 and $70 million. Considered one of the greatest war films ever made, Saving Private Ryan's battle scene and filming techniques impacted many subsequent war, action, and superhero films, and numerous directors have cited Saving Private Ryan as an influence on them. The picture is credited with having helped to renew interest in World War II at the turn of the century, inspiring other films, TV shows, and video games set during the war. In 2014, the film was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress as culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. The film was also a major award winner and also gained its own share of controversy. Now, of course, you might know what I might be talking about. Of course, Saving Private Ryan was nominated for Best Picture, but lost out to Shakespeare in Love. The unexpected loss is seen as one of the biggest upsets in the award's history and led DreamWorks executives to accuse its producers, Miramax, of overly aggressive campaigning. A 2015 poll of Academy voters suggested that, given another opportunity, they would have voted Saving Private Ryan as Best Picture, which explains why Shakespeare in Love lately has been considered overrated. I don't really have an opinion. Other awards that Saving Private Ryan was nominated for at the Oscars was for Best Actor for Tom Hanks, Best Original Screenplay, Best Music for John Williams, Best Production Design, and Best Makeup. But of course, at the 71st Academy Awards, Saving Private Ryan did win several Oscars. It won Best Director for Steven Spielberg, making it his second Oscar, Best Cinematography, Best Film Editing, Best Sound, and Best Sound Effects Editing. Whether you think that the film should have won an Oscar, and if you do believe that, that's okay. Saving Private Ryan is definitely one of the greatest war films of all time. I don't really have much of an opinion because, confession, I haven't watched Saving Private Ryan, so I wouldn't really know what to say. But, you know, if I was to get into it, I would totally be willing to watch Saving Private Ryan, given how culturally significant it is, and how it's been a big influence on modern World War II films. But yeah, I think if you're into Steven Spielberg, I would totally recommend watching Saving Private Ryan, and is definitely one of the most essential Steven Spielberg movies of them all. And for my final movie that is essential for if you're to get into Steven Spielberg, I'll be talking about a film that was released 13 years ago. That film being Lincoln. Released in 2012, Lincoln is a biographical historical drama that was directed and produced by Steven Spielberg and stars Sir Daniel Day-Lewis as Abraham Lincoln, the United States President. Lincoln features Sally Field, David Strathairn, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, James Spader, Hal Holbrook, and Tommy Lee Jones in supporting roles. The screenplay, written by Tony Kushner, was loosely based on Doris Kearns Goodwin's 2005 biography, Team of Rivals, The Political Genius of Abraham Lincoln, which covers the final 4 months of Lincoln's life. The film focuses on Abraham Lincoln's efforts in January of 1865 to abolish slavery by having the 13th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution passed by the U.S. House of Representatives. This was a passion project for Steven Spielberg that he had been thinking of doing since after Schindler's List. Produced by Spielberg and frequent collaborator Kathleen Kennedy, filming began on October 17, 2011 and ended on December 19, 2011. Lincoln premiered on October 8, 2012 at the New York Film Festival. Produced by DreamWorks, 20th Century Fox, and Participant Media, along with Reliance Entertainment, the film was distributed by Touchstone Pictures and was released on November 16, 2012, in the United States. Lincoln was acclaimed by critics, who lauded its acting, especially from Sir Daniel Day-Lewis, Spielberg's direction, and its production value. And at the 85th Academy Awards, it received 12 nominations, including Best Picture and Director, and won Best Production Design, and Sir Daniel Day-Lewis won an Oscar for Best Actor, the third in one of many of his great performances. Lincoln was also a commercial success, grossing over $275 million at the box office. It has since been cited as one of the best films of Steven Spielberg's career and one of the greatest films of the 21st century. Now, what are my thoughts on the Lincoln movie? Well, I certainly agree. It's definitely one of the best, and one of the best things about Lincoln is definitely Sir Daniel Day-Lewis's performance as Abraham Lincoln. He looks and sounds like the real-life president, and really does make you believe that he is Lincoln. And I definitely remember watching this in theaters, and it was definitely one of the best. I thought this would be a straight-through biography going through Lincoln's birth, how he met Mary Todd Lincoln, how he became president in general. You know, the whole shebang when you do a typical biographical movie. I didn't realize that it was about Lincoln fighting hard to get the 13th Amendment approved by the House of Representatives, but it's still a very great movie. Well acted, well directed, and, well, I think it was so hard to find a Spielberg movie of the 2010s or 2020s that I could say is essential, but I do think Lincoln is one of the most essential Steven Spielberg movies of the 2010s, and if you're going to get into Steven Spielberg, I highly recommend watching Lincoln. It's one of his best. And yeah, that's my list of the most essential Steven Spielberg movies. What a doozy this was. I mean, it's great to really look at these movies and see how this director has evolved over time, from being a small-time TV director in the late 60s to being a pioneer of the blockbuster genre and being influential as a director and a producer and everything else in general. I mean, I wasn't sure whether to include his other films. I mean, I wanted to mention Hook, but I I really wasn't sure if I should or not, given his reputation, but I don't think that matters. I mean, Spielberg is definitely one of the most influential directors. I feel influenced by him. He's definitely one of my favorites, and I'm really happy that I got a chance to really talk about him on the anniversaries of Color Purple, Jaws, and The Goonies. And he's definitely, he's still going to remain an influential director when it comes to modern blockbusters. To this day, I think we wouldn't have modern blockbusters without filmmakers like Spielberg and George Lucas. But anyway, yeah, if you want to really get into Spielberg, these are the films I would recommend you get into. I mean, they're definitely a rite of passage when it comes to getting into movies. But yeah, that was my list of essential Steven Spielberg movies. I'd be happy to talk about other movie directors and their films that I feel are essential if you're going to get into them. But thanks for listening to this podcast episode. It was definitely a nice change of pace, and it's good to be back and to talk to all you fine folk. I definitely plan on doing a commentary companions, doing an audio commentary on the 2004 Spider-Man 2 movie eventually. I'll get to it. But thanks for being patient with me and for being so understanding as I transition through everything. This is definitely a big change for me, but I'm definitely glad to be living somewhere where I feel safe and don't have to deal with gaslighting or anything like that. I mean, if I can survive, then you can survive. You can do it. I know I can. But anyway, thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. Don't have a good day. Have a great day.